Hey, I'm your host, Skeptical Scott. Welcome to Funny You Say That, a podcast for heathens. Imagine living in a country where your beliefs, or lack thereof, are respected, where no one can impose their religious views on you, and where you can practice or not practice any belief system without fear of hate, violence, discrimination, and or persecution. This is the vision for the Secular Alliance of Michigan. Today, we'll break from our usual storytelling to focus on life right now, at this moment, post-election 2024. I take it many of you, like me, were numb for a minute in November, but I think today's interview with Chris McLaughlin will help us on two fronts. One, social connections with others who have dropped the supernatural, and two, secular action now to combat Christian nationalism. Atheists, agnostics, free thinkers, secular humanists, and all other nuns, unite! Please welcome to the show, Chris McLaughlin!
Woot.
Woot. Hi, Chris.
Hi.
Hey, this is great. I'm so glad we got to do this, and you've had a busy day. So at the time of recording, it's right before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, coming up in a few days.
Can you tell our audience here, where are we?
Well, right now, at this moment, we are in Southeast Michigan. Man, what city are we in? I don't know. It's just a megalopolis.
Yeah, we'll just say we're north of Detroit.
We're north of Detroit. There you go. In the Detroit metro area. And we are recording this inside of, this is the subterranean wing of the Steve Gualdoni recording complex.
I'm so glad we were able to book this.
Mm-hmm. It sounds delicious here. I hope that the audience is appreciating the tasty sound that we're getting.
This is great. We were setting this recording equipment up, and we were joking with our friend Steve here, and he was saying, so wait, you atheists meet up. In fact, you've got some more meetings today, right?
Yeah, today's a busy day.
What are you doing at these meetings, and what was Steve's joke about that?
Yeah, so the atheist meetings, first they start out with, you have to make sure to put the baby on the grill right away, so that
seasoning,
season it right, so that it's cooked by the time the meeting begins. Right.
You're a skeptic on the move.
Yes.
Yeah. Tell me something that's good for you today. Where were you this morning?
A couple years ago, when we created the Secular Alliance of Michigan, one of the things we wanted to do was to create sort of these extensible programs, right? These ideas for meetings. And I think a lot of folks who are familiar with the secular community, they already know, they're familiar with things like Skeptics in the Pub, for example. You know, we were just coming off the pandemic, and it seemed like meeting in a pub wasn't the healthiest thing to do, that maybe we want to do something that would be, healthy. So one of the ideas, and it came from my wife, actually. So she's been a long time participant in walking groups. And I don't know if you're hip to walking groups, but there's one in every community at least. It's just people that get together and they just walk in the mornings, right? And to walk and talk and have some coffee, whatever. And so we sort of modeled this, the Skeptics on the Move, we called it, right? And so Skeptics in the Pub, Skeptics on the Move. And the format is that we walk for about an hour, usually do about 3 miles, 2 to 3 miles. And then afterwards we meet up at a local pub or a, yes, or a coffee shop or whatever, some place that we can hang out and talk for another hour. So it's like a 2-hour thing. Yeah. And it was something that we thought, this is something that we can bring to the atheist community here in Michigan, to people who want to start their own group in their own communities, right? This would be an easy format for people to follow. We do this every weekend. We rotate it around the Metro Detroit area. We kind of have a plan of how to do this. So we can tell people if they come to us and ask us like, hey, we want to start something like this in Grand Rapids or in Lansing. We can tell them exactly what they need to do to be able to make that happen.
I love it.
The thing about starting an atheist community from scratch,
right?
It's a lot of work, right? And it's not a lot of reward at first. Sometimes you only get, 1 or 2 people that come out, if that. to an event.
We're bridging it today because I know I'm somewhat anonymous here, but Scott, Skeptical Scott, from west side of Michigan, here on the east side of Michigan with Chris.
Yeah.
And so I think there's an interest there. I want to say there is. I hope there is.
Oh, there is. There is. Yeah. We had a Flint group for a little while. That was really fun. I grew up in Flint, so I knew the area, and we got a group kind of started, but then, people have lives, and they're still in the community. They still come out to events and things, but they never kept the Skeptics on the Move thing going. But there's other things that people can do, if it's as simple as just, we want to encourage people all around the state to have a group where they can get together with other people and get together in person. The internet is great, and we atheists, we hopped right on the internet right around the turn of the century, and we had a big head start when it was difficult to do that. But now everybody's on the internet, right? Everybody's doing everything. And there's just something you get from doing things in person, like with people. There's a kind of relationship that you build, and that's the kind of relationships that are meaningful and can create meaningful change. Whereas online, as fun as that can be and as convenient as it is, who doesn't like watching YouTube in the morning in your pajamas, right? Or, whatever.
It's not very risky, too.
Yeah, it's not very risky. And I know some folks, we found, we have, for example, the Secular Alliance of Michigan Discord server where we can get on, people can hop on and off and talk to each other. But even then, it's convenient for some people, but then it's very difficult for others. Even some technically savvy people, I always get complaints like, oh, I could connect, I couldn't make this happen, whatever. In person, I think we know how to do that. We've been doing that for tens of thousands of years as human beings. I think it's just it's a low lift, right? You just have to get out of bed, especially if it's a Sunday morning walk with Skeptics on the Move. You have to get up, and we walk year round, even in the cold, right? Doesn't matter what the weather is. I think Steve, who is one of our hosts, he says something to the effect of, there's no such thing as bad weather for walking. You just dress appropriately. Yeah.
Michiganders, we know how to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. It's interesting if people don't have a lot of, if they've been in their bubble and they don't have a lot of interactions with AAA people, awesome agnostic atheists, that's what I call it, right? The insinuation then is, then you must, grill a baby or worship the devil or whatever it is. You are involved both with Secular Alliance of Michigan and Michigan Atheists. Do you see a lot of overlap there? Is there a reason why you're involved with two?
Yeah, so I serve as the state director for Secular Alliance of Michigan. That just means I'm the final decision maker, but it started in January of 2023. We wanted to put together an organization that would bring back our atheist communities that were, dead or dying at the time. That is one of the missions of Secular Alliance of Michigan. We have 6 missions in our mission statement that we do, and one of them is to support existing atheist or non-religious organizations around the state, and also to help create new ones. Ultimately our goal is to have, to be able to help create a meeting, an atheist meeting, where people can get together in person within an hour's drive of every resident of Michigan. And we were just, again, let's get in our time machines. We were just getting out of the pandemic. It was almost near the end of 2022 when I think President Biden had finally, stated that this is the end of the pandemic, right? What did they call it? The endemic period of the pandemic. I saw this moment in history that we're living in right now, today, right? We just had an election just a couple weeks ago. Trump, he's on course to be the president, and I saw this 2 years ago, that he was already campaigning, he was already moving in that direction, and the biggest part of his coalition that he's assembled of support is the religious right. Even if, for example, Biden had won a second term, we'd have people like Mike Johnson in the Senate, Christian nationalists. I saw this 2 years ago heading our way. All of our secular organizations at the time, in January of 2023, they were in disarray. And so we needed something to bring us back together again. This thing is what we ended up calling Secular Alliance of Michigan. And it started out, the original idea, some folks I hope will get a chuckle out of this, because I do, I wanted to start this out as a identity organization, like Michigan Atheists, right? It's atheists.
Yes.
Right? And I was looking around, and there was already a humanist organizations, and there were already these and that. And so I thought, well, okay, there's so many names for non-religious people. Let's find one and call ourselves that. And that's what we'll be. This is our identity. And the one I glommed onto was one that I've liked for a long time, the Brights. Remember that?
Yeah.
It was Daniel Dennett was kind of the popularizer of that. It was a couple in California that started out this thing they called the Brights movement. And then Daniel Dennett picked it up and then took it to all of the conventions and started talking about it online. And it sort of, it caught on, but it fizzled out online. Nothing ever happened. I thought, let's take this thing that's sort of gone fallow and bring it back, and we'll be Brights. And so I brought it to my compatriots, and they hated it. Every single one of them hated Brights. Like they had they all had the reasons too, right?
For listeners here who don't know Dennett don't know Brights.
Yeah.
Like what is that? And then tell us why they didn't want it.
This couple out in California, they wanted to come up with an identity, a name for atheists that didn't have all of the baggage attached, all of the negative connotations for people who were unfamiliar with who atheists are, right? There's a lot of propaganda on the religious right about how wicked and evil and bad atheists are. But if you just change the name, suddenly you don't have to deal with that. That was the idea that they came up with. And of course, Dennett suggested that, well, we could divide the world up into, Brights, who are people who are not religious, and we could call the people who are religious supers. So, for supernatural.
Yes.
But a lot of people take the bright thing as if we're some kind of a brag, like, oh yeah, we're smarter than everybody else.
Seems like enlightened or something, right?
Right. Yeah. So, that was one of the reasons why it kind of died out in the first place. You can still I think you can go to brights.org and you can see the website that they built and that describes the whole movement. And it was wonderful. It was like a cookie cutter thing because it had, logos, like we're all familiar with the atheist A and the humanist H, like, and the little dancing humanist guy, right? And they had their own little Brights logo, and we could, it would have been a cookie cutter thing. But again, I was outvoted 6-1 for this. And
hey, better than FAM, a Free Thinker Alliance of Michigan. Like we're the FAM, like family.
Yeah,
no, we don't want that either, right? So
it's a little corny.
I like Sam, and I actually like your logo. And if there's a bumper sticker, I want it.
That's why that was one of the suggestions that we came up with finally. I was so frustrated. I went to Doug Marshall, who's the coordinator for the Reason Station in Warren. And I went to his house so frustrated, everything starts with a name. You got to come up with a name. And this, by the way, is one of the suggestions we give to people who want to start groups around the state. Is come up with a name first. I know it sounds silly,
right?
But you got to have a name and maybe a logo, something so people can recognize it online when you send out announcements and things. So yeah, I went to Doug's house and we spitballed a bunch of names. And the one that just jumped out to us, right? We're taking different words and putting them together. And Secular Alliance of Michigan was the thing. We wanted it to be Michigan based. Because that's where we live. This is Michigan. We have our own unique way of doing things here in Michigan that they don't do in Ohio or Illinois or Wisconsin or anywhere. This is who we are. And so I don't remember who it was. I want to say Leon Panetta, but it was somebody in the bigwig in the Clinton administration who said the phrase, right? Was it think global, act local? So we wanted to take these ideas and these things that we wanted to do, but instead of trying to be too big for our britches, just do it here in Michigan, right? Where we live and get these things going. And then maybe someday, maybe there'll be a Secular Alliance of America or something.
If I'm somebody who wasn't really happy with the election, let's just say, or whatever, and I'm looking for how can I tap in to something right now that makes me feel purposeful when I feel helpless? Because at the moment, I think a lot of people feel, what do I do now? I think about too, even in 2016 when Trump first won, and there was a decline in church membership right after that moment. Yeah. I would not be surprised if that happens again. But that being said,
that's in the headlines right now. So
yeah, if it's dropping, there's a natural need then to connect with something. again, I might be just making this up, but that's certainly how I would feel is, all right, if I'm not going to be there, where am I going to be? And yeah, I guess it's a tribal thing. I hate to say it that way.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's because people ask us, what are you? What are your beliefs? And it's nice to have a convenient, just a title, something, whatever that is. I'm a humanist. I'm a agnostic. I'm a whatever. It kind of gets you most of the way there. And, and answering that question for people who kind of want to, know where you're coming from when they're talking to you. I was thinking about this myself today, about humanism in particular. It has caught on bigly here. Bigly. At least here in Michigan, I think, sure. that just that word, that description. In particular, what I've seen over the last couple of years, working with all of these different groups that are members of our alliance, is that we're seeing a lot of folks who are doing just what you're saying. They were churchgoers, but they're moral people, right? Mm-hmm. They care about right and wrong, and they can't go along with the direction that their churches were going and that their communities were going. I mean, I've got probably the best example of that. There's a couple who came to us about a year ago. The husband was a faculty member at a Christian college, and he quit because they were bringing in Christian nationalists, like at their commencement ceremonies and things like that. And he was never, he was a scientist first, so he wasn't like really an atheist, so to speak, but he was very skeptical, and he had a lot of deep conversations with a lot of the other faculty about the nature of the universe. So, and his wife was a nurse, and she worked at a big hospital. And they had people like in their congregation who were, telling people not to get vaccinated, not to wear masks, all this stuff. She's a real hero, right? She was on the front lines during COVID, working when we didn't know how deadly this thing was. And so it was very dispiriting and disheartening for them to be around in that culture, Christian nationalist culture that has grown up now. And so they came into our community here, started going to Michigan Atheists events and other events at Detroit Atheist Meetup. And I think that humanism, getting back to that, mm-hmm. is kind of a natural extension, because it is a natural extension of Christianity. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but humanism is, it started in the Christian church. Back before humanism, a few hundred years ago, the church promoted, and by the church, there was one church, right? Mm-hmm. There was no Protestants or Catholics. There was the one church in the West, and they promoted that that everyone dedicate their lives to God. That is what you did. And then the Protestant Reformation happens, and then suddenly this idea that was labeled humanism comes about, where you orient your life towards humans. Right? Humans are the most important thing. And, God is important, but, humans are in the front seat, God's in the back seat, right? And that's where humanism began. And so it is kind of a natural extension of Christianity. For those folks who were raised Christian, maybe you still consider yourself Christian. You can be a Christian and a humanist Christian, that's a thing. But if you want to even take it a step further, if you have the kind of doubt that we have as those of us who call ourselves atheists or agnostics, humanism still applies. It still works, right? It's not dependent on any one particular religion. It's just the idea that humans are important and that we should treat each other with respect and kindness. And that's really the fundamental thing. And again, the parallels, even secular humanism has manifestos, which are essentially creeds, right? If you like that kind of thing.
Yeah, right.
You can follow, there's a creed there for you to follow. You can go look up the Humanist Manifesto. There's, I think, 3-4 versions now that talk about things, everything from reproductive rights to whatever. If you're looking for a guide, you'll find it in humanism if that's what you're looking for. Our local meetings here in the Metro Detroit area, there's 2 big ones. There's 2 sort of tentpole meetings. The Detroit Atheist Meetup, which is in Roseville, and then there's the Michigan Atheist Meeting, which is currently at an IHOP on Rochester Road in Troy. Those meetings start out with what we call like a dinner hour. They happen in a private room,
which we're headed to momentarily.
Yeah, at a restaurant, and so people can go there, grab a bite. And then the meetings start, and then there are different formats. The Detroit Atheist Meetup is really fun because it's almost like a support group, but it's a little more just wide-ranging, and where everybody can just raise your hand, and if there's something on your mind that you want to talk about, you talk about it, and the whole group gets into these conversations, and it's really a wonderful thing. And then the Michigan Atheists, of course, has a more formal meeting typically. Current events, what's going on, what do we need to do? Again, it's an activist organization, so the Detroit Atheist Meetup is more of a socializing. Michigan Atheists is more of an activist thing where they're always planning on, what are we going to do? What kinds of things are we going to do to move the needle on secularism and where it is today? So I first got involved with Michigan Atheists back around 2007 when I first moved to the Metro Detroit area. I went to my first Michigan Atheist meeting. Back then, it was, remember, things have changed. Just in these last 15 years, things have changed so much. Back then, atheists were still really, really looked down upon. Now, I know you're in Grand Rapids, and it's a different culture there.
They're pretty conservative there, yes.
Here in Southeast Michigan, you can go around with a T-shirt that says, I'm an atheist in big red letters and walk around the shopping mall, and nobody will blink an eye. Maybe somebody will give you a second look or something like that, but nothing will happen, right? Try doing that at a shopping mall in Grand Rapids, you might have a different response. I don't know. One of the things that inspired us for Secular Alliance of Michigan in the beginning to start organizing were the polls, right? That showed that the nuns, right, NONES, the non-believers were on the rise. The number of people in Michigan who described themselves as atheist, agnostic, and not religious, you add it up, it's about 17%. And then you look at the number of Catholics here in Michigan, which has been declining precipitously, but still about 17%. Mainline Protestants, about 17%.
We're a slice of the pie, man.
So here in the metro area, of course, we have one of the largest populations of Muslims outside of the Middle East. How much as a percentage of the population of Michigan do you think that Muslims make up?
No idea. I know where I'm from in Kentwood, we have a pretty significant one as well.
So what would you guess? Just put a number to it.
I'm going to say 17%. 8.
8%. Okay. How about Jews? People who are Jewish?
Less. I'm going to say 5.
5%.
Again, this is a shot in the dark here, but
add them both together, it's 4%.
Wow. Okay.
2%
that
each.
Surprises me. Yeah.
Yeah. 2% split down the middle, almost exactly. And yet, here we are, still today. Who's taking up all the oxygen in the media, right? In the popular media.
Great point.
They don't talk about us, but we are a major force here. We are a major demographic here in Michigan. And so, again, that gave us that was sort of our inspiration too, to organize, because here we are, 17% of the population, but we don't have, there's no atheist churches on every corner, right? There's no places for us to meet and organize and to, experience the world from our perspective together in a communal setting, or for that matter, the kind of, shall I say, power base, right? From which to influence politics.
The kind of special rules that other organizations get.
Yeah. So getting back to Michigan Atheists, right? The last tabling we did was the Dally in the Alley. It's a big Metro Detroit event outside of the Wayne State University campus. We got a double canopy for that event. We hand out literature describing the various local organizations that are members of the Secular Alliance, and we talk about Michigan Atheists in particular, since this is done under the Michigan Atheists banner. We had, I just can't tell you, there was just a constant flow of people coming up to us and saying, I am glad you're here.
Nice, yeah.
So the first time we did it back in 2023, we got like $70 in donations. And it was all $1 and $2 donations, just people stuffing our little donation box. This time it was over $170. And again, all $1 and $2 donations. So imagine how many people that is who liked what we were doing so much that they took money out of their pocket and put it in the donation box. We had a continuous flow. So one of our important leaders in our community, his name is James Kleiner. He set up a debaptism station right out in front.
Yeah.
And there's a chair, and of course he had a hairdryer, right, with a debaptism sticker on the side. And he had a whole spiel that he gave, that this will take away, the effects of, whatever, your baptisms or whatever. And we had people lining up.
Wow.
To do this. Just wanted to do this. Again, this fun thing. Our original intention was to do this out of fun. It's just silly, right? Baptisms are just a silly idea in the first place. And so we're just doing our version of it. But we had quite a few people, I would say at least a half a dozen people who joined us in the debaptisms, who told us, who were very touched. Let's put it that way. We had tears, people crying because they had felt so abused by their religion. They didn't ask to be baptized. You're either too young to make the decision for yourself, or you're just old enough that you're smart enough to go along, right, with everybody. But this is what you should do.
You're just pressured. Yeah.
And these people, they felt like you could see it in their eyes. You could see it in the way they talked. They said, like, this is a relief. I feel clean.
Wow.
I feel like good again.
I haven't ever seen that in action, but I can understand that it can become an emotional experience to realize that I'm not branded or something like that.
Oh man.
People who are interested in Michigan Atheists, or Sam in particular, there's a segment of people that maybe they've always been secular, but then there's that, like the people who are emotional, probably the ones that grew up religious and they don't want it anymore. What would you consider yourself?
Oh, I'm a lifelong atheist. Yeah, religion is alien to me. So tonight's event, one of the nice things about Secular Alliance in Michigan, and one of the things that I wanted to bring to it was, and this is one of our missions, right, is that atheism, because our numbers are on a par with other major religious groups, that we should be a part of the religious landscape just as much as anybody else, right? If there's a spectrum from non-religious to religious, we are on that spectrum, and we need to take our place. And so I wanted us to become a part of a local interfaith group. And I don't know if people are familiar with the interfaith, the enterprise of interfaith. It's something that's become more and more popular over the last few decades. But and it's mostly liberal religions that are involved in these things. The really hardcore, Christian nationalist, traditional Baptist types those churches don't usually join interfaith groups because they're just not interested in the rest of the world. But typically liberal religious groups, Jewish groups, Muslim groups, liberal Christian organizations, they band together in what they call an interfaith group. And they usually have events where the people mingle, right, and learn about each other and about each other's religious beliefs and ideas and traditions and things like that. And, I've been, on the train for, I think, for example, that there should be mandatory religious education in America. I think that it's a shame that kids, can graduate from high school and know nothing about their neighbors' religious beliefs or practices. I don't think this should be an indoctrination style religious education, which is what the Christian right wants. Just the facts. What do they believe? What do they practice? What's the significance of these symbols that they bring into public, or that we see when we go to their house, right? When my kids go to the neighbor's kid's house and play, and they see this, symbol on the wall, what does that mean? The whole idea of interfaith is just this kind of this continuation of this idea that I've always felt, that we need to know more about each other, right, to have a peaceful democracy. So it was important to me that atheists join an interfaith group. And sure enough, we started out probably about, this was one of the first initiatives that we did, like around the middle of 2023. And we joined the Troy area interfaith group. We're part of the leadership now. And you asked me about my own personal religion. Like I said, I'm what Christians would call unchurched. Stepped foot in a church maybe 3 or 4 times, right. And it was probably all for weddings or something, my whole, up until I was 40 years old, going to like this event tonight in Troy. It's going to be held at the Troy First United Methodist Church on Livernois. I got to go there yesterday in preparation because I'm again, part of the planning committee and making sure that everything is set. Mm-hmm. And this place was huge. Wow. this huge space. So we've done, other events at other places. Like, for example, we did for the International Day of Peace event, we did it at a Jewish synagogue called Shir Tikva. I walk into all of these religious spaces, and they're, like I say, it's like going to the moon or going to another planet. It's just weird to me. I don't get it. I was asking one of the guy who runs their AV system, and they had this table. I said, "What is that? What's the significance of that table?" He says, "Oh, that's our altar."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, that's what an altar
so
looks like."
when you hear altar call, now you know what that is, right?
Yeah. No, I still don't.
Altar.
I still well, yeah, I imagine it's something like that, but I still don't know for sure.
What you've done for me today is like step back for a minute. Imagine that experience that, Scott, you had in college when you learned about others and what their backgrounds are and what it did for your own learning and lack of ignorance after that. And that's what I'm hearing you say is, at first I was thinking atheism is not a religion, and it isn't. All right.
Yeah,
right.
It's not.
But when you present it as a spectrum, it's more of a, okay, we have different ways of doing things.
Oh, yeah, there's
And
denominations in Christianity, right?
Yeah.
There's denominations in non-religion. And,
Yeah.
I mentioned a few of them, right? Atheist, agnostic, humanist, skeptics, secularists. There's lots of different flavors of... And the nice thing is there's no atheist pope who tells you what you have to believe in order to be that. And so you never have to feel guilty because, you have a particular style of non-belief that's good for you, but somewhere somebody's saying, no, that shouldn't be. And again, that was one of the things that we wanted to bring to Secular Alliance of Michigan, was we wanted to work with all these different groups. We had to, make sure that we promoted a kind of non-religion that was, that we weren't promoting conformity. Right. That's not what we're about.
I just think, I think about what Steve said back in episode 2 or 3. We're all in the same boat, so let's start acting like it. And everything starts with better understanding of the other rather than ignorance.
Absolutely.
I appreciate what you've been doing, that especially from somebody who has considered them lifelong atheists, that you are participating in this world and bringing people together.
Well, here's the other side of that. These religious folks, by participating, I'm going to just share the conclusions because these were hard-fought, hard-won conclusions that I'm going to tell you right now. These folks, the religious folks that we deal with, they are not used to being around atheists either. And just as alien as they are to me, I'm as alien to them. By being out there as out atheists in the public, showing them who we are, we're just normal people like everybody else. We make it more difficult for the propagandists to paint us in a negative light. Because sure enough, I will bet you that, Pastor Hallam, if somebody tells her that, atheists are evil and wicked, she's like, no, I know Chris McLaughlin, and he's an atheist, and he's a nice guy.
Yeah.
And they can't get away with it, right?
Being more three-dimensional.
They can only get away with it as long as we stay in the shadows.
Right.
If we don't take our place in public, in the religious landscape, we don't do that. And getting involved with the interfaith group has created a political opening for us. And we've had some political successes in doing lobbying. So where do I start? The mayor of Troy is going to be at this interfaith event. And he knows me now. Wow. He knows who I am.
Yeah.
If I have a problem, I can go to him, Mayor Baker, and I can go to him, and he'll take me seriously. In Warren, we fought a 15-year battle with the city of Warren, right, over a prayer station, a prayer table in City Hall. And it's only since we've started lobbying, and there have been a lot of, I can't take complete credit for it. I think there's 3 main things that have led to what's going to happen this Tuesday. This Tuesday is the last day of the prayer station. It's going to go away. And we're going to have a party in City Hall.
Yeah.
We're going to bring cake.
Yeah.
The 3 things that happen, they got a new mayor, first of all. The organizer, Doug Marshall of the prayer station, he started sort of upping the ante and doing blasphemy, like putting signs on the Reason station that says
the fact that there is a reason station.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole nother story. Let me tell
true.
you should talk to Doug.
Yeah.
But he's put signs up that say, Jesus never existed, for example.
Okay.
Upping the ante. So the city starts getting complaints. And then there's the lobbying effort by Secular Alliance of Michigan to where Mayor Stone, right, calls me about things. Right, she has my phone number.
Like, tell me about this. Yeah,
she can reach out to me, and because we did lobbying and we started, going to city council events and speaking during the public speaking time, and introducing ourselves, talking about the things that are important to atheists and non-religious people, especially secularism, right, the separation of church and state. They finally figured out a way to end the prayer station. You got to come up with a solution where everybody saves face, and they finally did it.
Got it.
And it's going to happen at the end of this month. There will be no more prayer station in City Hall, and Doug can take his first vacation in 15 years.
Oh my gosh! Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he's been staffing that and running the prayer station the Reason Station. Sorry. Again, back 15 years ago. He won a court case, a significant judgment. Lawyers from the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the Americans United, and the ACLU all had lawyers in this case that he brought against the city for having a Christian prayer station in City Hall. And their solution, of course, was, again, what's problematic with our current secular system is that it's equal access secularism. So that means that cities can have religion in government. They just it has to be whatever benefits accrue to any particular religious organization or religion have to be duplicated to all others who want it. So in other words, the solution to the prayer station was another table. Again, an atheist station. In this case, he named it the Reason Station. That's not really the solution. The solution is strict secularism, where this stuff just doesn't belong in government, right? France is probably the model for that, where, kids, school children can't even wear their crosses or their religious head coverings to school. That's how strict they are with secularism. And it works out just fine. I think it would work out here. This current system sort of pits religions against each other and gives advantage to the most well-resourced group, right? This is why Catholics have such an oversized presence in our society. They've got the most money and the best organization and the most real estate. So, they get to be a bigger part of society than Protestants or Jews or Muslims, or in this case, secular people.
Secular.
Yeah. So strict secularism gets rid of this pitting the organizations against each other for government resources and keeps everything truly fair, where, the government, the business of government should have little or nothing to do with religion.
Agreed. And I'll just say thank you. Thank you, Chris, because what I'm hearing right now that we've had this long form, which is hard to do over the phone, so I'm glad I'm seeing you face to face. I'm seeing the activists come out right now and I'm hearing your call that if we don't take our place, somebody else will, or somebody will answer for us. They'll fill in the blank however they want to.
Well stated.
So thank you very much, man.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Thanks for the work that you do, by the way.
Oh, I appreciate that.
And I want to tell you, I was really skeptical about this.
Yeah.
I don't normally do podcasts, especially in the nude, because it just seems like the kind of thing that I don't know. I trust your expertise.
Yes,
that it
sir.
sounds better, right?
Yeah.
If we're naked, but still, it's it's the skeptic in me that's fighting this.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's cold. It's cold right now. It's cold. It's cold.
Unchurched, de-churched, free thinkers unite. We'll even still accept you if you call yourselves right. What's important is that we just don't give up the fight. The First Amendment, we can't surrender that right.
Thanks for listening to Funny You Say That. Check our show notes to connect with the Secular Alliance of Michigan and more. Our intro music was created by an anonymous supporter of the show. Any other music or sound effects were provided by this week's co-host, Artie Fisher.
While we're not a real religion, interfaith we can see. Keep the government neutral, that's the way it should be. Christian fundamentalists taking over the throne, but atheists, agnostics, you aren't ever alone. I'm a
Interested in being a guest on our show or sharing a part of your personal questimony? Email us at HeySkepticalScott@gmail.com. You can also find Skeptical Scott on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and TikTok.
It's cold.
East side and the west side, free thinkers unite. South side and the Ubers join us in this fight. We are skeptics on the move. If you're godless, we approve.
It's cold.
Thank you to our guest, Chris McLaughlin, from the Secular Alliance of Michigan. Secular society, it's under attack. Church together with state, now that's really whack.
Drop the supernatural, embrace the rational. Believe in as many true things as possible.
Otherwise, you may end up believing in something that is even more artificial than me.
May skeptical thoughts be with you.
And also, with you.
See you next time on A Funny You Say That Friday. Cheers.
Talker, smooth talker,
It's cold.
smooth talker. I'm a smooth talker.
It's cold right now.
Scott, that was our cringiest song so far.